Hi everybody, this is Andy Timmons speaking to you from Maxim Media Studios in Dallas, Texas. And I'm here to just run through my live rig for you. Powered by Mesa Boogie, the Lone Star on the Stiletto. And I'm just going to go through the entire signal chain for you so you can see how I get my live tone and in the studio as well. Starting with this is the prototype for the AT100 Ibanez guitar made in 1994. And that's plugging through just a couple of pedals. Down here we have the Boudoir wah-wah pedal. Something very important in all these pedals is that they're all true bypass. So nothing in the signal chain at any point is going to be sucking tone. Okay, it's something very important to remain the sonic integrity of the guitar into the amp as much as possible. So that Boudoir is true bypass. From there I'm running into the Peterson Strobo Stomp, which allows me to tune quietly in between songs, and I do that really frequently, especially in recording sessions and live as well. I'm kind of a tuning fanatic. As we know, the guitar's never really in tune, so I like to get it as close as possible, and the Peterson helps largely. I can really get it there quickly, quietly, and it's true bypass, like we talked about. From there, the last thing before going into the front of the GCX system, my switching system, is a BB preamp by the Exotic Company, and it's just it's basically it's a gain box. I usually have it set for just a little bit of gain, and we'll go through that as I demonstrate sound by sound how I'm using every component. But from there, that being the last pedal in my very short pedal board here, I'm running into the front of the GCX switching system. It's the ground control by Digital Music Corporation. And this unit, it's brilliant. It allows me, with the touch of one MIDI pedal, it allows me to switch not only channels on my Lone Star or my Stiletto, but helps me control a couple of different pedals that I have that I can put in or out of the front of the amps. And also I'm using common effects between both amps. It allows me to use those same effects in each effects loop. So with one button I can turn effects on and off, pedals on and off, switch from amp input or channels. Brilliant. Because when you're in the heat of battle and you're playing live, the last thing you need to be doing is too many pedal jumps, as we call it. So tap dancing, as it were. And so let's talk about the effects actually as well before we get into all the amp sounds that we're going to spend some time on. In the effects loop of both the Lone Star and the Stiletto, I have available to me the Electro Harmonix Deluxe Memory Man, and the beauty is that it is analog. I'm a huge fan of tape echo, and as you know, tape echo sounds wonderful, but it's kind of a volatile thing to use day to day in live gig situation. There's maintenance involved, and I'm not always the best at tape echo maintenance. So I love these analog units. There's a little sacrifice in that if I used a digital unit, I could have a lot of programmability with different effects times and levels. But I so greatly prefer the sound of analog that this is the way to go for me. It's a nice happy medium, and we'll demonstrate some of that as well as we go through the rig. But that's the basic signal chain. Okay, starting off with the Lone Star, we're going to demonstrate my basic clean tone. And the signal path at this point on my number one switch there is the guitar running into a Carl Martin compressor. Let me go back and show you that real quick. Through the GCX, I can turn the compressor on and off in front of the amplifier. And when I have the clean channel on, I'm generally switching that on as well. So it'll be the Carl Martin compressor into the front of the amp. And in the effects loop, we actually have two Deluxe Memory Man echoes chained together. And I usually have them set at varying delay times, one being around 500 milliseconds and one being around 350 milliseconds. If I'm running stereo in the studio, that's usually the kind of delay ratio I have going on. Like on the Resolution CD, that was pretty much it. I'd be running a couple of different tape echoes set at roughly those settings. But for live, for reliability and consistency, I like these Electro Harmonix, and it sounds like this. You hear the two different delay times, and so it's a really pleasing echo sound. It's got a little bit of chorusing on the repeats themselves, which emulates to me the sound of the wow and flutter of the tape. When it's just a little bit out of tune, it just adds this wonderful chorusing sound you can hear. Okay, so, and this is the type of sound for songs when I'm playing live things like Cry For You, that type of thing. That basic tone there, or I'll use it for things like Electric Gypsy. Depending on the mood, sometimes I'll run it nice and clean, just straight in like that. Sometimes I'll add a little dirt to it. I'll put the BB preamp in front of the amp, and you'll get a little extra gain. Pretty much like that. So that's basically how I'm using the clean channel. It's very Fender American clean in the basic design, but it adds I think a lot more warmth and a lot less harshness in the top end. I can hit the front end of it pretty hard, and it doesn't really crap out per se. It still retains its depth, and when I add a little gain to it, it still has its clarity, but the beauty of both of these amps is they both really love pedals. Every classic amp always has a great tone on its own, but when you can find one that also is flexible enough that when you want to alter things just a little bit with that classic pedal favorite of yours, whether it's the Tube Screamer or any of the classics, the Fuzz Face, not all amps sound great with certain pedals, but with the Lone Star, I've really found favor with a certain couple of pedals. The amp sounds great on its own. You kick in a little extra every now and then, and it's beauty. It's exactly what I'm looking for. Let's move over to the lead channel, and this is the channel of the Lone Star that when I first played this amp, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I told this story earlier where I was already endorsing another amp company, and we were working on a signature amp, and things were okay, but my good friend Steve Mueller said, "Oh, we've got this new amp, and you really need to try it." So I just took it out to a gig without even really having spent any time on it. Took it to the gig, and I plugged in the lead channel and heard this tone. Nothing in front of it. There was this huge, warm, fat tone that I was struggling to get out of any amp, much less, just plugging straight in and getting it immediately out of the amp. Let's step back and let me tell you of a couple of secrets of how I run this lead channel.